Radio Retrofuture.
Well, have you already been to the Netherlands to take photographs, or?
I did. The first three pictures that I did for this, I exhibited them at Emporium Veronese in Arnhem, the steam.
Oh, I must have missed you there. I've been there all the years.
Yeah, so I was there upstairs in the sort of stage clubby area where they had a bit of music playing. I was up there in the corner, and that was 2014. So I was there in the at that one, but the last two that they've had, I wasn't able to go to.
Oh yeah.
2013, sorry, 2013.
Yeah, it was for the last time, basically last year.
Yeah, I've spoken to one of the girl that organises it, and Tessa, and she said that it started to make her ill, basically, so she had to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. But I was at MCM Comic Con Hanover in May, and we were invited over to do that, which was fantastic. Really, it was a really great event, because they basically, what we managed to do was all the people that were interested in steampunk, we got them all together. So we effectively took all their names and addresses and their sort of email addresses, and we invited them to start a Hanover Steampunk group, which I believe they have done, so that's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, that being said, it's 8 o'clock. Well, 1 for 8, actually. But you know what, there already are a number of viewers in the chat, so welcome everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Radio Retro Future. Today I have my guest Gary Nicholls, a photographer extraordinaire, I might say. Good evening, Gary.
Yeah, good evening to you, and to all the people that are logged on.
Yes, there's already quite a number of them, actually. Yeah, let's just get straight into what you're up to right now. But before we get into your current project, could you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm 60, that's a good start. And yes, you can all say I don't look it, but trust me, this project has made me definitely feel like it. So yes, that was only a couple of weeks ago. But really, about 4 years ago, I decided that I had to leave my mark. And I've always had this idea of wanting to put some sort of project together, a story-based project. And this is what the Imaginarium has become. It's really, one thing that I sort of say to people is, everybody says think outside the box. And if you can actually, if you think there is a box, it's actually already too late. Because from my point of view, my imagination doesn't have any bound. The only limiting factor is my ability in Photoshop. So this is what I do. I spend roughly between 30 and 40 hours a week on top of my day job doing this project. So for my day job, I'm a partner in a sustainability company. That's my 8:30 till 5 job, and then this is evenings, weekends, any spare minute I get, I'm putting this together.
Yeah, because for an impression, you said the picture in the background was over 500 hours of work.
Yeah, it's 500 hours work. It's multi-layers. I lost count at 436 layers. Basically, it's a street that doesn't exist. So I've gone all around the UK. I've photographed buildings from different town centres: Cambridge, Leamington, London, Warwick, different buildings that I liked, and then I sat and built the street. And then once I'd built the street, I needed to fill it with people. So there are people in there from a steampunk group in Liechtenstein. I went there for the day a couple of weeks ago to photograph them, to put them in. There are people from the Lincoln Steampunk Society, from Great Kent Spectation Society, and also there are over 40 characters from the story are also in that picture. Some of them up to no good, but it's up to the reader or the person looking at the picture to actually recognise them and to see what they're actually doing. So that I had this idea. I've been working on this picture for a couple of years, in fact. I had this idea for this picture quite a long time ago.
Okay. And does this particular picture also have a story attached to
Oh
it?
yes, yeah. So basically, what the Imaginarium is, it's firstly it's a trilogy. The first book is called Eva's Story, and it's a Dickens style, steampunk themed, very dark tale. There's probably 9 or 10 stories all running together. And it is, murder, prostitution, kidnapping, all the good stuff really is in there. So it's kind of each picture tells an integral part of the whole story, and it does flow really well. There's, I think, 40 at the last count, 41 characters. There's 65 extras. There's been a lot of people that have been involved in it to create the story, but as I say, it's you don't have to be a fan of steampunk to enjoy it, because quite frankly, you don't have to be a fan of Star Wars to enjoy that. It's just a very good story. The difference with this is that it's high-end art that tells a story, as opposed to just a high-end art book. It's actually it's a very complex, interesting story, because I've used quite a lot of Victorian language to tell it as well.
Okay. Do you mean with Victorian language, Victorian slang, or?
Yeah, some Victorian slang. And so some people will need to Google a few words that I've used, which makes it more interesting as well.
Okay. Well, it's a good educational tool. That is certainly true.
Mm. Sorry. Go on.
Was that also a part of your intention?
Absolutely not. So, I always wanted to create a project, and basically just to prove to myself that I could create this kind of art. Because the thing about it that I always say is that it's 21st century art, and there's 3 reasons why. The first is that you need a very high-end digital camera to produce the quality of image. Mm-hmm. You need Photoshop, and you also, all my images are actually printed on metal. Now, 10 years ago you couldn't do that. So the idea is, when they're printed on metal, the detail and colour is amazing, but also the light goes through the image and gets reflected back. So they all look like they're backlit, which is quite there now. They're stunning.
But you're now talking about the original prints, not
the original prints. Right? Now, with the book is going to be printed in such a way that it represents that kind of look. So the pages in the book are a matte grey laminate finish. So they're very smooth, very almost like a Remy bottle of Remy Martin bottle. Very smooth, matte finish, but each image is then UV spot varnished, so they actually jump out the page at you. Now, as you can imagine, that is not cheap. It's it's a fortune to have it printed, but I turned down a couple of big publishers who wanted to do the book because they wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. Now, the important part of this whole project for me, it's never ever been about money. It's been about quality of image and actually the passion for it. So I used to get a Photoshop magazine years ago, and in there was a how to create a steampunk image, and they took a beautiful model and basically put bits of clock and train and God knows what all over, and said, right, that's it, it's a steampunk image. And I just thought, well, there must be people that actually do this for real. This can't be just a thing that is in films and the like. So I googled it. I found the Lincoln Steampunk Festival. Luckily for me, that was only 3 months away from when I was sitting there googling it, and I bought 2 tickets. Took the tickets into my wife and said, we are in September, we're going to this. It's now moved to August bank holiday, but 4 years ago it was September. And when I went there and started looking and seeing these people with absolutely astounding costumes, fantastic gadgets, they were having the time of their life. I just thought, this is the theme I've been looking for for my project, but it was only going to be 3, maybe 6 pictures, a little short story at best. That quickly grew into, well, the first book is 150 images, but it's a 450 image trilogy, and it's gone completely crazy. Something I should say is that for a long time I had the story in my head. All the people that I was working with had no idea what was going on, but I tell them what their character is, and the way that it forms in my head, if I see someone in an absolutely amazing costume, I will, that character comes to mind almost instantly. But it's not just the character. I know the whole backstory. I know whether they're married. I know whether they've got, whether they're having you know, what their job is. Everything forms. It's almost like I've lived their life. But that happens within minutes of me seeing them. And so then I approach them and say, look, because I turn down a lot of people who want to be in this, but I approach them and say, you've got an amazing costume, I've got an idea for a character, would you like to be in it? And I haven't had anybody say no yet.
No, I can imagine, yeah.
You know, but the advantage of that is that I can then tell them what their character is, because none of these people in my images are posing, they're actually acting. Right. So they act out the scene. So to give you an idea, I've taken just under 10,000 pictures to get the 150 that I've created. So I work tethered to a laptop in a studio because I can control the light. I know exactly what the image is I'm trying to create. So that tends to be the way I work. But it's very organic. And as I've said, it's now a trilogy. So another 8 years' work. And I'll say that quickly.
Was that your intention to start the trilogy, or was that just okay?
No, it's because it's such a story that I couldn't tell it in one book. Okay. So and although the whole trilogy is called the Imaginarium, each book's got its own subtitle. So this first one is Eva's story. The whole trilogy is about her. And it's also about a secret object that's in a box. And you don't find out what that object is until the final book. But it's got some amazing powers, the object that's in the box. But then what we're going to... the luck, if you like, that I had, 2 things happened to me. When I went to that asylum for the very first time, I met Julie Walton and her husband Pete. Pete is an absolutely astounding engineer. His work is, I think you'd be very, very hard pushed to find anybody that goes to the level of detail that Pete does. The necessity, which is an object that's in the story, it was 11 months from start to finish, from designing it to hand making it. It all works. Basically, it has hands that open up. Every time we take it to an exhibition, it blows people away because it's just such a beautiful piece of work. But there's 218 parts in it, and it's taken it. You know, that's the level of detail that Pete goes to. And his wife Julie makes the costumes. So she's a costume designer and dressmaker, and she makes the costumes for Eva. Quite a few of the other people in the story are wearing her costumes as well. So I met them. That was the first thing, and then I came and exhibited 3 pictures at the Emporium Veronesque in Arnhem, 2013. And on the stand next to me were John and Karen, who actually run the asylum from the Victorian Steampunk Society. So they run the asylum in Lincoln, and I'd already exhibited there, but they were so busy organising and getting everything done, I never actually had a chance to speak to them. But because we were on the stand next to each other in Arnhem, we had a little bit of time to talk. And I realised that Karen actually had exactly the look I was looking for one of the women in the story. So again, I asked her if she would, if I've got a character in mind, would she like to do that, which she did. But what they've also done is the support they've given me is insane. I've been to doing so 2014, so last 2 years I've been going to exhibit at Comic Cons with them. As part of the Victorian Steampunk Society, we have a big area at some of the big Comic Cons in this country, and all because they actually believe in my project, which is fantastic. So you know, I think the biggest single thing, if someone was to say to me, "What has this done for you?" Apart from making me feel old, it has actually introduced me to some of the most amazing people I would never have had this opportunity to meet, and so friendly as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, well, I have a very similar experience doing what I do, so yeah, it's a completely different way of connecting people, I suppose.
Yeah.
As well, it brings people together. I think that's the beauty of projects like that. You know, get people together who otherwise would not even speak to each other, so to speak.
No, that's right. It's I mean, I don't think that take Pete for example. The two of us are on a very similar wavelength in the way our creative minds work. If I am, for my day job, if I am having to drive quite a long way to meet a client, my brain starts ticking over. I could phone Pete up and his first words are, "Oh no," because that generally means I've come up with something else and it's going to have to spend time looking to make something new. The thing about him as well, he won't make anything twice. Right. So there's only ever one of anything. Which I like that as well. So it's, you know, people may try and copy it, and I suppose that's quite flattering if they do. But in terms of the things that Pete makes, there's only ever one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of Steam makers have that same idea of how they make stuff. But let's take a few steps back. How did you get into photography in the first place?
My father was adamant when we were kids that we had to have hobbies. So we basically, pretty much every hobby going, we did it. And I was 3 when I was first in a darkroom with him. You know, old black and white pictures and enlargers and developer and fixer, etc., etc. And I suppose for the first quite a few years I was taking pictures, but not really that seriously. It wasn't until 2007 I decided to buy a decent camera and start taking photographs. It wasn't probably for a couple of years before I found my thing, if you want. And there is a way of doing that actually. And I do, when I do talks to photographers, firstly I tell them to forget that they're a photographer for just one night and think differently, because I don't work in the same way as a photographer. My images are formed in my mind completely finished before I pick a camera up. So I then get onto Google, I try and find a place in the world that matches what I've got in my head, and that's where I then say to my wife, this year's holiday is going to be Kefalonia, or, you know, I match it up, I try and match our holidays up to where I need to go to take the pictures. So I then sit and basically build that image to match exactly what I started off with in my own mind. So I joined a camera club in 2009, I think, something like that, 2007 maybe. I joined the camera club, realised after a couple of years that my way of working was different, and generally people didn't understand it, because to be fair, they were photographers, whereas I feel that I'm an artist with a camera, so it's a different concept. But one thing that my father did tell me 40 years ago, and there are other people saying it now as well, which is interesting, is that if you want to discover your style as a photographer, you go through magazines, newspapers and books, and you tear out the pictures that you really like. And then you write round each picture what it is about it that you like. It could be the tone, it might be the fact it's black and white, it could be a portrait, landscape, doesn't matter what it is. You then put all that information into a spreadsheet, and you'll see the same things keep appearing in the columns. And you take that information, all those ones that are the same, and it could be black and white landscapes. Because your brain is tuned to seeing and liking those images, you are much better photographer if you stick to that. So I realised that my mind is tuned to telling a story in a picture. It's not, you know, my portrait work, I would be quite happy with that. I'm not unhappy with it at all. But I do like a portrait to tell a story rather than just someone standing there smiling at the camera. It's not, you know, and the way that I in fact, Adrian Sommerling, who's a Dutch photographer and composite artist, he said that the difference between a photographer and an artist photographer is that a photographer, when he's taking a portrait, would concentrate on the eyes and not really bother too much about the background, whereas someone who does what I do and what he does is we fill the canvas from corner to corner with detail.
Yes.
And that's a very different thing. And what that does for the images actually is it creates a huge amount of depth. And it might seem strange because you've got no focal depth as such in terms of focusing, but the depth it creates when it's printed on metal is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why I do it, basically.
Yeah. One of the things that bothers me as a model is, you know, that a lot of photographers come at you with, can I take a photograph? And then my first question is, okay, sure, what would you like me to do? And 99% of the cases, their response is, oh, just do whatever. At which my first thought is, oh, sure, I'll keep on walking. I said there's also something, but you know, it really bothers me, that lack of ambition I see in a lot of photographers, especially at conventions.
Yeah, I mean, I do. So the one thing that I would say to people that are thinking about doing something, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be art. It can be anything. Firstly, if you've got it inside you, don't leave it too late, and be quite selfish and actually just go and do it.
Yeah.
But secondly, take Photoshop for example. I only learn the techniques I need to create the picture I'm working on, because it's much too big a program to sit and learn a whole lot. But also, I've been on quite a few courses with top people, just purely to see a different way of doing something that might be a little bit quicker, or it might give a different effect. And by doing that, it allows you to broaden your knowledge base. And the one thing that everybody says as well is take notes, because you will sit there writing and or a story, or you'll sit there working something out in Photoshop. If you don't take any notes as to how you did it, it's very difficult to reproduce it when you really need it. So I keep a book of all the techniques that I've used, and then if I think, oh, I can't remember that, I can always go back and look it up.
How did you learn your skills? You said you started this as a hobby from very early on, but
yeah. Well, I learnt my so my sort of photography skills came from my father, but they also came from belonging to. I mean, I was vice chairman of the camera club, so actually going to the camera club, listening to other people talking, chatting with people that have been photographers for absolutely years, and gleaning a little bit of insight into how they work, and also understanding what lenses do, what you can do with your camera, what kind of that's the first thing. But then the second thing, which is the most important thing actually, I studied the way that Caravaggio uses light, but just with a paintbrush.
Could you explain who Caravaggio is?
So Caravaggio, a very famous Renaissance artist, he's one of the old masters basically. His work is amazing purely because the way that he works, wherever the action is in his photo, I wish, in his picture, wherever that action is, that part the light is centered on. Mm-hmm. So your eyes drawn to it immediately. And I liked the way that he lit his paintings. So that's the first thing I did. I worked out how to do that, but with studio lights. Okay. But also then I would watch period dramas on the TV. I wasn't really watching them. I was actually trying to work out how they were lit. So light and what you do with light is the most important thing. Once I had sort of started to look into all of that, I then booked a one-day course with a retoucher called Glyn Dewis, who is absolutely fantastic. He's a genuinely nice person as well, which makes it so much nicer to go to one of his days. But he teaches you in such a way that your workflow changes, and also he gives you an idea of how to do things quickly. They call composite work selling the fake. You've got to try and convince people that all those images are real. So out of my 150 in the first book, there are only 3 straight shots. Every single one, none of the people were there at all. So even there's one that's a card, it's a gambling den basically. That's a composite of about 15 images, because all the people in that shot, no one could make it all at the same time. So I had to photograph them all separately. The table wasn't there, so it's a complicated setup, but I know exactly what's going to happen with it once I sit and put it together.
Right. To get back to your light story, it reminds me kind of what Rembrandt did. He also did a lot with lighting in such a way, didn't he?
And that's the thing. If you do the other thing about it, if you think about it, all those old masters, their work was layer based. They're built up with multiple layers to create the depth in their images. That's exactly what I do in Photoshop. But it's not just that, because my images are printed on metal. They are actually almost like the old plate process. So what happens is the aluminium has a special coating on it. The image is printed in reverse on a cloth that's laid over the top of the aluminium. It goes into a 9-ton per square inch heated press, heated to 200 degrees C. The ink changes to gas and becomes impregnated into the coating that's on the aluminium, and that's why they look like they do. Now, I had to wait 3 years for that process to be available in the UK, because the only company that was doing it was in America, and they wanted an absolute fortune to actually post the images to me, never mind print them. So I couldn't afford it, so I had to wait. Luckily for me, it became available in the UK. So there's a company in the UK, and there's one in the Netherlands actually as well. So if you've got people in the Netherlands listening to you or watching this, there is a company there.
I'm sure some Dutch people will see. Okay, I'm not gonna respond to that. Anyway, it's well, we've got an entire workshop here on how to do what you do basically right now. But how did you get into steampunk in the first place? Were you already interested in it before you?
No, when I bought those tickets and went to the asylum, I didn't realise. I just thought it was in films like, you know, Wild Wild West and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I just thought it was films and stories. I never realised for 1 second that there were people that did it. Not just that, people all over the world that do it. So that sort of leads into, in fact, we were talking about it earlier. In the next book, I'm creating a huge steampunk army type image where I'm going to fly around the world, photograph different steampunk groups: Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. I've had lots contact me, and I'm going to build a 4,000 steampunk image like Lord of the Rings, where all the armies lined up on the plane ready to attack. So it's going to be pretty insane. But also, it gets me to go and meet all these different groups all over the world, which is something that I really want to do. But this, I should say, this first book, Eva's Story, is about a baby that's born in a workhouse, and under the Poor Law, which was something that was during Victorian times. She works in the workhouse, and at the sort of a young age, she's sold by the workhouse owner to work in a bordello as a skivvy. And later in life she becomes an adventuress, as they were called, which is basically a high-class prostitute, working in the bordello. Now, she's a bit too popular. She's bullied by the other girls because they don't like the fact that she's popular. She gets down really to quite a low point. At the same time, we have Dr. William Percival Stockdale, who is a wealthy doctor and inventor, whose wife has died of consumption. He's racked with guilt that he can't possibly save her, and she's died. He's lost his soulmate. He can't live with himself, and he goes off to the woods to hang himself. That's a lovely thought. Goes off to the woods to hang himself, and while he's sitting there thinking about his life before he throws a noose over a tree, the elven queen who lives in the woods, the forest is her kind of domain, nothing moves in there without her knowing it. She finds him and pulls him back from despair and says, if you want to show some sort of recompense for the fact that your wife died and you couldn't save her, here is a secret recipe for an elixir that you can make, and you can go out at night helping the sick and the poor and handing this elixir out, which he agrees to. Now, for that shot, it's called The Still in the Woods. He's Batman. They build this huge...
Excuse me.
Schoolboy error, that one. They build this huge still in the woods where they're gonna make this amazing elixir. Now, I needed a still, obviously, for that shot, so I emailed Sip Smith's Distillery in West London, who are a vodka and gin maker, and asked if I could go down and photograph their still to create this picture, which they happily agreed to, and which is where it come from. So it's quite amazing how fantastic people have been to help me. So when he's out actually handing this elixir out, he sees Eva hanging out of the bordello window, drunk and completely down on her lowest point, and he decides to spend a bit of time and he's going to save her. So that's where the story basically takes its turn, and it becomes a battle for Eva between the bordello madam. I have Corvus, the steampunk witch. She's got a steam-powered broom, which is pretty cool. Her husband, in real life, her husband Adrian makes that. So I've got quite a lot of husband and wife teams that are a part of this as well. Mark and Donna, Adrian and Joe, and obviously Pete and Julie. There's quite a lot of husband and wife teams in, which is good as well. And they all have a sort of creative input. And the reason it became a trilogy was at one one photo shoot, Mark, who plays Captain Abernathy, he said, "Why don't you call the next book Frankenstein?" Well, that then sent me down a different route, thinking, okay, I really quite like that title. So the second book starts off in present day. It's called Robbie Pertwee Frankenstein. It starts off with present day. Robbie Pertwee is sort of 11, 12 years old. He's got 4 or 5 friends who are similar. They're into steampunk, a little bit goth. They're bullied at school because they're a little bit alternative. They spend their lunch times sitting at the back of the class, eating their sandwiches and talking about airships and gadgets and fantastic flying machines and Nerf guns, you name it, they're talking about it. And Robbie he lives on a farm and he's at home alone one weekend. Decides to do a bit of exploring. He's up in a barn, one of the outbuildings, and he finds a crate in the corner covered in hay, but there's a glowing light shining down on it, which is what's highlighted it to him. So he cleans it all off, takes the lid off, and inside he finds documents and paperwork that shows that he is Dr. Williams' great-great-great-grandson. And right in the bottom of the crate is the necessity, so the object I was talking about earlier. It's stuck, the hands are all stuck holding the orb in the middle, it's corroded, it won't work. And he decides to clean it all up and get it moving and working, which he does. So, after a couple of weeks and he's got it working, he has his friends round, takes it round to his friend's house one night. They're all sitting round looking at it on the middle of the table. And one of the other boys says, "Well, what does this lever do?" And he pulls the lever on the side, the hands open up, it glows green, and all 5 of them get transported back in time to where the first book ends, where Dr. William is now building a automaton, which is Frankenstein, to take on the nemesis in the story. I have a couple of body snatchers who don't steal bodies, they steal mechanical body parts. So if you've got a false steampunk arm, we wake up in the morning and it's gone because they've stolen it to sell it to him for the automaton. Mm-hmm. And so basically the story progresses in the second book. It's still all about this box that's got this object inside. So it's essentially, as I said, in the third story, part of the trilogy, it's when that box is opened and a particular person holds the object inside when all sorts will happen. It's fair to say, at the moment, I don't know what, because I haven't got that far.
Wow.
But I'm getting there.
I'm sure. But where do you get your inspiration from for the story?
Everybody says that to me, and I have no idea.
Okay.
I actually can't. I can't explain it. As I said, it's organic.
Okay.
Often the story comes from the people that are in it, because I see them and that character comes to mind, and then I build that story up. Now, just to explain how that can be quite interesting, I obviously know what the story is in my head somewhere, because I will create something and that is completely relevant to the beginning of the story, and yet I hadn't thought of it at the time. It's quite difficult to explain, but I would say, as an example, so all of that I said to you about Dr. Williams' wife dying of consumption and him going off to kill himself in the woods, the necessity has got magic powers. When he invented it and created it, he's mortal, so he couldn't possibly have put the magic in the orb. So as I'm writing the story and creating the pictures, this suddenly dawns on me. People will look at that and go, "Well, okay, that's great, but how is it? Where's it got its magic from?" So I had to create that part of the story about his wife dying to introduce the Elven Queen, because she puts the magic in the necessity.
Right. Okay.
So,
Let me rephrase the question then. What kind of stories or writers or
oh, okay. Well, yeah, I understand now. I mean, I read a lot of crime thriller mostly. They're the kind of books that I read a lot of when I have time to read. Um, and in fact, although this is Dickens in style, and everybody raves about Charles Dickens, quite rightly, because they're great stories, but his writing style is very odd.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's kind of, well, almost, if you were to say to me, well, this place the place in the picture behind you, where is that? Well, Dickens would say, well, it's irrelevant. It's just a place. It doesn't matter. It's not part of the story. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter.
He would repeat himself a lot though, or
Yeah.
like how the Christmas Carol starts, like where he just an entire page just to say yes, his old partner had died.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that for me, I just like, and I suppose that's what the attraction for steampunk is as well, because over the past 4 years, my steampunk wardrobe has grown beyond recognition, and I've made my own gadgets as well. I started off feeling that for the steampunk community to understand what I was trying to do, I had to be part of that community, and to be honest, I love it because the Victorian clothes are very fitted. You can't fail to feel good.
Yes, exactly.
What you're wearing, and it's also the gadgets. For me, the gadgets are just amazing, and more importantly, the creativity is just fantastic. So that all of that comes together to. And to sort of give you a kind of example of people that come to me and talk to me, when I'm explaining the story of the second book and how, if you had a false arm, you'd wake up in the morning and lose it. A woman at Manchester Comic Con, dressed as a steampunk, said to me, well, can I be in it? And I said, well, it's kind of, there has to be something that I actually think, yeah, that can work. And she banged her leg and she had a false leg. So her husband said, I can make it a steampunk one. I can bolt bits on it and turn it into a steampunk leg. So I said, yeah, okay, put your name down on my list and I'll be in touch. But, that's the kind of thing that happens. It's quite random in how it actually happens.
Okay. Well, let's see what questions I have remaining, but they're already quite far. So yeah, I think we're at the point where can people get the book when it is it already officially out?
No, the book is being launched at the Lincoln Steampunk Festival, August Bank Holiday. I ran a Kickstarter campaign which basically, because I'm having this printed at such a high level, it's a fortune.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I've been able to finance myself, unfortunately. It would be nice if I could have done, but I haven't been able to do that. And the original plan was that there would be 3,000 first edition copies, of which the first 1,000 would be signed and numbered, limited editions. The Kickstarter fell short by 12,000. I was trying to raise 60 because that's how much I need. It fell short by 12,000, which actually was quite good. And what actually happened is it made people get behind it actually and want it to actually succeed and be printed. But what it's meant is I'm only doing 1,000 first edition copies. There will almost certainly, I think there'll be the second edition, but the first edition will be limited and signed. So I've got to sign everyone, I've got to number them, which is unusual for a book, but this is how I want it to be. And all the people that helped me via Kickstarter, they had an opportunity to pre-order, which they have done, which gave them a 20% discount. People that are on my newsletter, I have sent out an email today with a code that gives them a 10% discount. But basically it's imaginariumtriology.co.uk. That's where you can buy the book.
Yeah, if you send me the link, I can put it down in the description.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. And also My website is g-n-p.co.uk, and that has quite a lot of other stuff on it, because I am also working on a few other things. Sometimes you can get too immersed in a project and you need a little break to go on to some other stuff, so I've been working with another couple of other people to create something special. There's a burlesque group that have asked me if I would do a calendar for them, for example, but in my style, which means it will be a 12-story calendar. In other words, 12-picture story that create the calendar. So it's it'll be something that will be done for charity. Then they'll be selling those before Christmas. But it's hoped that it'll raise quite a lot of money for charity. So that's quite nice to be doing that too. But it's just something that gives me a little break from this before I get completely going again on book 2. Also, I think all the people that are around me think I probably need a bit of a break.
I can imagine, yeah. Okay, how many photos in total will be in the book?
It's over 150.
150, and the price was?
The price of the book on the website is £98.75. For your European listeners, the pound has dropped against the euro, so actually it's cheap to buy it at the moment.
Okay.
But there is if anybody's got my newsletter. But what I'll do is I'll send you the code. You can put it on as part of your description, and then people can look it up and get the 10% off. That's absolutely fine. If they've taken the trouble to sit and listen to me talking for this period of time, then they can be rewarded with a 10% discount. That's good.
Yeah, I also partook in that Kickstarter, and now I'm really considering using that code. So, well, for anyone who hasn't been convinced yet, remember the pound has dropped. Gary, please tell people why they should buy your book and what they should take away from it.
Well, the first thing to say is that normally a high-end art book would be double the price that this book is. But as I've already said, it's not about the money. This is just about me being able to tell this story, and also for people to be able to be happy with what they're getting, like the story, like the pictures, and happy with what they've paid for it. So that's the first thing. But also, I know I've written it, and I know this sounds a little bit egotistical, but it's a great story. It is a great story, and people keep asking me if I smoke Skittles, because it's such a weird, crazy story that and all these people are all involved in it. This is a much used word, and I absolutely hate it when people say this, but it does explain it. It's been a very long journey for me to get to it, and I can genuinely say that because it's been 4 years' work. So the thing about it is my images, my pictures printed on metal sell for between £1,000 and £3,000 each. You're getting 150 in a book for £98.
Right.
So that says everything to me.
That's a bargain.
It's a bargain. Yeah.
And with that being said, I think we'll leave it at this. Like we said, link will be in the description where you can buy or pre-order this book. It is?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it takes you straight. So I've got my website, but I've got another site that is just literally to pre-order the book. And obviously by pre-ordering it, you guarantee that you will get one of the 1,000 copies that are available. I think already, I mean, that site's only been up for a couple of weeks, but already there's quite a number of those 1,000 gone. And I would, which I was saying to you earlier, I've got 4 huge events between now and November where I'm selling the book, and I would expect pretty much they will have all gone by Christmas, because they make fantastic Christmas presents.
I see. Well, you hear it, folks. Don't wait too long if you want this incredible work. Next week we will have a panel on what if steampunk goes mainstream. So if you like to hypothesize with us, you're welcome to join the panel. It's an open one, so I'll just wish you a good night, and as always, make it. Thank you for watching this episode of Radio Retro Future. If you really enjoyed this episode, a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you want to remain posted on our next episodes, please subscribe to our channel. Furthermore, if you really want to help us grow, please consider donating to our Patreon. $1 a month would help us a long way to keep doing what we're doing. If you want to be an official sponsor of the show, that would also be greatly appreciated. If you have any questions or requests, please contact us through the social media links down below. Thank you for your support.